Next on the list are anime made by Clamp. Their work used to be very famous throughout the 90s and for half of the Double O's, thanks to their creativity and interesting premises. Ray Earth, for example, was an isekai with magical girls and giant robots. That was a most mind-blowing concept at the time, and then Escaflowne came out and everybody forgot Ray Earth because of its poor production values. Cardcaptor Sakura was considered a groundbreaking magical girl show by being the most moe thing at the time and by taking a generic magical girl formula and focusing more on the daily life than saving the world. And then K-On! Came out and overshadowed it in moe, thus everybody forgot Cardcaptor Sakura. X was a revolutionary idea about people with superpowers fighting in Tokyo and were using magical barriers so they can fight in alternative versions of reality. And then Fate Stay Night and Sakuga no Shana came out, which had the exact same concept with better visuals, and everybody forgot X. As you can tell, all their anime felt fresh when they first came out and were eventually surpassed by other shows with prettier colors. But that is not the only problem, the plots were also very loose. Despite the epic premises, very few things were happening in them, although it was originally considered a subversion to focus on the everyday lives of the characters instead of magical fighting or world-shaking events. The same subversion is what was making them boring to rewatch or have much to talk about them in general. Chobits, for example, is their only work that is still remembered fondly today, and even that is mostly for their romantic comedy than the mysterious technological disaster in the plot. And even the extra focus on the characters' lives, which was fleshing them out far more than in any other show about magic and fighting, it wasn't enough to carry the whole show, especially when most of their appeal was sexual in nature. You know, homosexuality, incest, and stuff we get in every light novel nowadays. So basically the relevancy died out in the mid-00s when light novel adaptations took over and Clamp ran out of ideas. They were only making cash grabs after that through crossovers of their own shows, basically fanfiction, and were degraded to designing the characters for Code Geass, which is the prime reason why everybody looks so skinny. Other than that, nobody cares about them for over a decade. There were only 3 worthwhile fighting shonen in the 90s, and I consider them to be that decade's big 3. As far as legacy is concerned, Togashi's Yu Yu Hakusho and the first Hunter x Hunter adaptation don't have much. We just remember them fondly for their themes and characterization rather than their plot and fighting, which are mostly an afterthought. Their greatest contribution was inspiring Bleach and Naruto, 2 far more popular and impactful series. Only Rurouni Kenshin had some legacy because it had follow-ups. Trust and Betrayal is still one of the best period dramas to this day, and the movies were decent when it comes to live-action adaptations. And then the mangaka was cut with pedo porn, and now many hate the anime, although its quality has nothing to do with what the creator is doing. It got kicked out of the top 20 highest rated anime this year because of it. The same year Made in Abyss went in the top 20, although it's made by a guy who loves to draw torture scenes about naked children. Does that sound hypocritical to you? Some of you asked me why I didn't mention Akira in the 80s. The answer is because it was just a tech demo to show off what you can do with animation. It's otherwise just a glimpse of what is going on in the manga, and it didn't have any follow-ups. It was just a standalone movie made to promote the medium. The end. Ghost in the Shell, on the other hand, is far more than that. Not only it was full of existentialism, not only it was showing what you can do with animation, but it also had sequels and reboots, each one with its own style and ideas. By constantly changing and adjusting to the trends of the time, it managed to stay relevant and impactful to this day. Although that way it doesn't have an actual identity because each version is its own thing, and the name becomes nothing more than a placeholder for anyone to throw in anything he likes. Consistency aside, the impact is there nonetheless, and it's huge to this day. Few titles managed to have such a nosedive in quality as Berserk did. I mean, it's so famous to the point it became the definition of dark fantasy everything else is compared to thereafter. But the more it keeps going, the more it feels like a comical fighting shonen. The original anime series was fantastic despite the weak animation, the movie reboot was mediocre at best, and the CGI monstrosity from some time ago made you suffer more than gods during the eclipse. All that aside, it's not nearly as appreciated as it was 20 years ago. Not because it got surpassed by something else, but rather because it no longer feels as serious. There are way too many waifus and comic relief characters, and the plot is not going anywhere. It dipped so low, people nowadays consider it equal to Goblin Slayer. Yeah, it became that bad. Ikuhara is a director who is more interested in pretty colors than plot, and for a while he was highly regarded as the cream of the crop when it comes to artistic animation. His contribution to the third season of Sailor Moon is what made that part the most creepy and eye-catchy of the bunch. Utena was one of the most audio-visually distinctive shows of the late 90s, and one of the titles anime fans were using to point out why anime are not just for kids. Fast forward 15 years and he comes back with 2 more shows, which were not working anymore. Shimbo Akiyuki had become the new best Archie director, and the lesbian relationships Ikuhara loves to include all the time were not that uncommon anymore. As a result, his comeback was received in a lukewarm manner at best. He is still praised for the pretty colors and the kinky characters, but beyond that, nobody cares about his shows anymore. 1998 had its own short-lived Big Three, and it was more about the theme than the overall quality. There were 3 space westerns, very famous at the time, although only one was left with a legacy, and it's not because it had a follow-up. Outlast Star had a very strong beginning, but turned into a forgettable episodic adventure afterwards. Trigun is the exact opposite, very underwhelming in the first half and great in the second. It lost most of its potential audience by the time it got to the good part. As for Cowboy Bebop, although it doesn't have an overall plot, it had a lot of style, which was very uncommon at the time. It's easy to understand why most newer viewers don't see what's so great about it, now that dubs have improved a lot and there is a handful of high-quality artwork anime every season. Those things were rare before the mid-00s. Cowboy Bebop was full of sakuga, great music, and was pandering the Americans. That's all it took for it to be the only one to eventually get a Netflix live-action adaptation. And last for this video we have the Satoshi Kon movies, which suffer from the same issue as Berserk. The early ones are amazing as anti-escapism takes on pop idols, the later ones become progressively more about the spectacle, less serious and less memorable. Satoshi was losing the thing that made him stand out the more he was directing. I almost feel relieved that Dream Machine will never be made post-mortem. That aside, these movies don't have much of a legacy either. Their impact was close to zero, nobody talks about them much or considers them as inspiration for later works. They are niche within a niche and become less and less relevant as time goes on and the industry focuses more and more on power fantasies than anti-escapism messages. SAO finally got good!